a non-traditional student.
Way non-traditional.
And that's becoming more and more the case.
Yeah, I started out, just real quick, I started out in 93 at UC, and first generation, and only child, and nobody else in my family or the extended family had ever gone to college. And I ended up getting on academic probation the end of fall quarter. I started at UC. And academic probation the end of fall quarter, and then by winter quarter, I was just too depressed. I never left my dorm room except to eat, and ended up flunking out by the end of that quarter, and then it's taken me 20 plus years
to decide that now is the time that you...
Figuring out what I want to be when I grow up, and then working like not so great temp jobs where it's just like data entry and So 2014 I decided I had enough of the office temping and I was going to finish the degree.
Go back and finish the degree.
Yeah.
And you also worked at the Post.
Yeah, I worked at the Cincinnati
Post
until they stopped publishing. So
yeah, Stephanie's been working with us since, when did you start? In May, right?
End of May.
At the end of May as an intern. She's going to be actually working as a full-time. She's been working as a full-time intern in through the first week of August when she'll
become a full-time employee.
Well, someday maybe.
Someday.
Okay.
No, we'll go back to finish her senior year at
UC. Okay, so you still have coursework yet to be completed.
Yeah, I'm almost done with like the journalism major part, but I still got to do my minor, and I've got like a stray science class because I hate science. I got a stray science, and then I got to do my foreign language. So.
What's your minor?
Electronic media.
Okay.
Which is what I started out in and flunked out of.
It's fascinating how things sort of change. You have to do a foreign language.
It's part of the general education requirement.
Way back when, you had to complete a foreign language in the doctoral program. Either Greek or Latin, because you were supposed to be able to read what the masters had written in their own language. They did away with that for the most part because everything is translated. So now you had to have meet a statistics requirement because almost all of the research was now being done. Counting numbers and
I took statistics. It did not go well.
Well, but that's if you're going to read the professional journals, you're going to need to be able to understand statistics, or if you're going to half the things that we do here at the CYC, what number went on to post-secondary education, what numbers did this, that, and the other, and what role did the mentors have, and all that. So it's fascinating to see the sort of evolution of things. Let me go back to the very beginning, following the leads that I think you have led me into. Back in the early days, we said that all children would graduate from high school with the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values necessary to be a full participant in the social, economic, and political life of the country.
Oh,
wow. No pressure. you are going to be a citizen. So therefore, you need to be able to participate and help to shape essentially the future of the country. So you need to be able to participate fully in all of that, in the political life, obviously the economic life, and the social life. So that was the vision, and that the CYC would be obviously able to help students reach that goal. We added to it, or our vision, we added to it that finances would not be the barrier that kept you from attaining that. So therefore, we need to have some kind of financial aid assistance to you. In the end, that's what ends up with educational talent search. Okay, that's where. But before educational talent search, and educational talent search is one of what are known as TRIO programs. At that time, there was Upward Bound. There was something called EOCs, Educational and Opportunity Centers, coming out of the President Lyndon Johnson administration. And so what we essentially did was to sort of have a private educational opportunity center. And then we had the opportunity to apply for an educational talent search grant, which we were fortunate enough to receive and have had from, I think, something like 1993 to the present.
So today.
Because you have to be renewed, so you have for a period of time.
We're currently waiting on our renewal for the current cycle, like it's any day. So we're
sort of got your fingers crossed.
Yeah, but, we're confident, but you're always
you never want to be overconfident.
Yes, sir. Agreed.
And of course, that has been tremendously helpful in terms of helping students both to plan ahead in terms of having earlier sort of testing assessments in terms of preparing for all of the sort of hurdles that you're going to have to jump. And then the money, which essentially it was not originally called the Pell Grant, but now called the Pell Grant. And so trying to help students receive all the funds that they are entitled to. And we then said, okay, there may be the need for last dollar financial assistance, that after you have received all the things that you are in, there's still
straight stuff,
and so but that was central to our mission, was to help students pursue post-secondary education without finances being an impediment.
Yeah.
So that's one huge piece of what CYC has done over the years to help fulfill that portion of the mission. Of course, the other sort of major initiative, and what preceded that in terms of time, but a cornerstone, maybe the cornerstone of the CYC is the mentoring program, where a caring adult is matched with a youngster, not to replace the parents, but to be a complement and a supplement to the parents. And the number of, back to statistics, the number of persons, young people, probably is approaching 50,000 since the founding of the CYC and the present. Maybe some duplication because but the number is immense, and the interesting thing, I think, is that both the mentee and the mentor have benefited.
Yeah, I'm hearing stories.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
From the arrangement or the matching, and the fact that we have some people, really including John Pepper, who have been with their mentee from about the age of 15, 16, and 17 to now they're into their 40s.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Children.
Mm-hmm. The mentees are into their 40s. And the mentor now considers themselves either grandparents or godparents to their mentees' children, and so that connection has been fantastic.
Yeah, see, I always just kind of thought that after a while, you just kind of got him through, so now he's on his own.
There are, and of course, obviously, that's one thing, is that this is not something that is to be a dependency kind of thing. But the same thing is true of your children.
Oh yeah.
You want them to be able to paddle their own canoe a bit.
And sometimes it takes longer than others.
And sometimes it takes longer than others.
Yeah.
But what the heck's her name now? But I bump into her, Susan Abernathy, and Susan is a volunteer at the Freedom Center, and I forget the name of her mentee, but they have been together for better than 20 years. And she's telling me this is what she is doing, and how proud I am of her, and this is her child, and how proud I am of my grandchild.
Your grand-mentee.
Yeah. So obviously that's not something that you sat down and planned out that this is going to be.
It just happens.
It happens, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That the bond, a real story, an actual event, and I don't remember their names, but the mentor picked up essentially a mentee who was in something like the 10th grade. And sort of said the first thing I had to tell her, and then said that she was very angry. Her mother had left the family, skipped out basically, and said, "No, I'm not your mother. I am your mentor. One, I need to help you to understand and be perhaps a little forgiving as far as your mother is concerned. So sort of things happen amongst adults, and it's not that she doesn't love you. Let's say she did the best that she could. And now, I'm going to help you as much as I can. I'm going to be there for you, come whatever, and we're going to make it."
Wow.
And of course, the pride that the mentor felt. The mentor worked for the sickle cell administration there in Avondale. But how proud she was when her mentee graduated and enrolled in a post-secondary education program, and so she knew the importance she had in this child's life. And those are the things that old people like myself now, after the fact, look back at and say, yes, what the CYC is doing is vitally important.
Did you ever, do you know in that particular story, did they, the mentee ever reconnect with her mother?
I do not know.
Yeah, we usually don't know.
No, I don't know. I suspect that there's a good possibility that they did.
Well, your comment around, because that to me ties to your other comment about, you're not there to replace, you're there
Right.
to supplement. In this particular case, the mother left, but you're still there to try to help rebuild and support.
Yeah, because the other piece of this, the mentee said, "I love my dad. However, I'm 15, 16 years old. I need a female that I can talk to."
You bet.
And that's sort of what happened as far as that particular story is concerned. That you were getting ready to ask a question or say something.
Oh, well, I'm just really interested in the family component of it. So beyond the mentor-mentee, the mentee's family. What's been your experiences? How that relationships have extended beyond the mentee to the family, if you've experienced that?
Only from a little bit more of a distance. The one there's one that comes to mind where both the mother and father had some limitations as far as their own educational background is concerned. And they talked to the mentor and said, we know that we cannot give her the kind of assistance. You talked about being first in the family to go to college, and I was also. No, I was not. My brother went before me. But they clearly recognized that we're going to need help in doing what's best for her in terms of her education. And they lived in the East End. The sort of end result of that particular story, and the daughter, recognized the limitations of her parents, who she loved dearly, and she ended up getting to go to Berea College in Kentucky. And Berea College, no one pays tuition there. They have to work their way through. Yeah. So it's tuition free, but the students have to work. Now, obviously, they get their Pell grants and whatever other. And actually, the daughter, I'm pretty sure, graduated from Berea. And I know she ended up in the going into the military. And this is again back to the mid 1990s or the late 1990s, where she is today. We don't know. I don't know. We talked about it one time. Following up on those who had come through the program, and sort of seeing where they were 15 or 20 years later. There are some amazing stories out there.
Yeah, we have to find. That's one of the things we're working on is how to find those stories. We're launching an alumni CYC alumni program that's designed to do just that. But it's going to be hard work.
It will not be easy work.
Yep.
I believe there is an employee here that came through a program that we had called TCAP. TCAP was called the TAF Career Education Program, which was a school to work initiative. And some of it is coming back. It was funded by a grant from the Department of Labor and the Department of Education. One of those declining grants. So if you started in 1995, let's say, and you received this amount of money the first year, a lesser amount the next year, and a lesser amount the next year, and by the fifth year, the funds were then going. But the idea was that companies. And our idea was that companies would essentially almost a co-op kind of arrangement. That we have to transition students into work, and you, company, have a role to play in that, and so you will pay them at least minimum wage when they start, and you obviously can increase that as they get more experience and improvement. And in a sense, it is similar to jobs for Cincinnati graduates. Even though Jobs for Cincinnati Graduates was already existing as a separate entity, and we were doing this at only one high school, but a similar kind of notion.
And you think there's an employee still at CYC who went through that program, the TCAP?
I think so.
We'll have to check. We'll ask. Because, again, what a great source of
Going
data.
up to everyone.
Yeah.
I think so.
Jane would probably know, too. I'll ask Jane.
Because I saw her at an event, and she came running up and said, "You're Dr. Bryant?" I said, "Yes." And that she was a part of the TCAP program at Taft. And I think because the CYC worked in partnership with some other programs and actually started them and then spun them off, like Artworks. So whether she is an employee of the CYC
or one of the others.
Yeah.
So I think the moral of the story is there are touch points everywhere. That
Working.
Yeah.
Just gotta find them.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious because Jane gave me background on you. It was all good, nothing bad.
Oh, I have a checkered career.
Well, I was curious because I'm totally new to CYC. I'm still learning stuff, and you've got you're telling us stories about like mentors and mentees, and the awesomeness that CYC does. I was just curious, like, what led you to like leave Wilmington College? Because like me and my few college friends that I have, we joke about how, it must be nice having your cushy little, you in general, cushy little college gig. Maybe we should get a cushy little college gig. Was it something, what inspired you to make the switch? Was it just like John Pepper saying, hey, you need to come over, and you did what he said? Or something you saw at college?
None of that.
Okay.
In quite that way. I had been at Wilmington College essentially for 19 years, from 1971 to 1990. I was still at Wilmington College, but I was also on the board of directors of an organization here in Cincinnati called Seven Hills Neighborhood House. And when the CYC was just getting formed, and the first thing that happened, Jerome Jenkins, who was the director of Seven Hills Neighborhood House and also on the board of the CYC, and said, John, they are getting started on this, and you have some background, and because I was also on another board called the EIC, I think it was EIC, which was Education Information Center, which is a part of the TRIO program.
Okay.
And so he and a guy by the name of Lavelle Bond, who was a PNGer, and also on the board of Seven Hills Neighborhood House, said, John, could you go up to Boston to take a look at a program that they have there in terms of the educational information center kind of things. And so I said, well, provided you're willing to pay the freight. So I went up and took a look at it and came back and said, this is what it is and how it operates and so forth. And just about that time, Sister Jean Patrice Harrington, my predecessor, was getting ready to retire for the second time. She had been the president of the College of Mount St. Joseph, and retired, and then was asked to help to sort of start up the CYC. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I had been at Wilmington College for 19 years. I was the head of the teacher ed program. Essentially, at a small college, I would have been the dean of the College of Education, if you put it in a university structure. Mm-hmm. But I hadn't taken a leave of absence. And the CYC was not envisioned as going forever and ever.
Oh, wow.
No, all right. So the question was, would I take a 2-year leave of absence from my position at Wilmington College and come to head up the CYC for the next 2 years, and then we would have solved all the problems and all of that.
No pressure.
Problems are so small.
Yeah. So I said, that makes some sense. I've done all of these things within the university structure, and let's get out and do some sort of real sort of world, even some real world kinds of things. So I applied for and received a 2-year sabbatical, and it was a sabbatical. I was going to go into the field and do some research and all of that, and then I would return to Wilmington College and resume my role as head of teacher ed. At the end of the 2-year period, John Pepper said,
"This is going to go on forever."
No. Do you think you could get Wilmington College to agree to an extension for a year? We're just getting ready to raise funds for another 3-year cycle and all of that. So I went back and sat down with Wilmington College, and they said, okay, we'll let you go for another year. At the end of that year, the 3rd year, John Pepper said,
yeah, we're getting the forever vibes here. Want to stay on?
and I said, well, I cannot expect Wilmington College to hold a
Your
place
position.
for me into perpetuity. So it's time to say that I would resign from a position at Wilmington. So technically, I was on the Wilmington College faculty until 1993. I started my sabbatical in 1991 to come here, but I was still, and that's an important thing because I had my TIAA craft retirement and everything back at Wilmington College, so we were paying from here a part of my salary into my account there at Wilmington College. So I was technically a member of the Wilmington College faculty until the time that I resigned in 1993.
Okay.
So that's.
So how hard of a decision was that to decide to resign officially from Wilmington and come on full time? Was it easy or was it hard?
No, relatively easy.
Yeah.
I very much enjoyed what I did at Wilmington College. I thought what I did was important. Sort of looked at it this way. I enjoyed being a classroom teacher. I taught at Withrow High School from 1960 to 1968. And told you I have a checkered past. and I
Do tell.
and I was the head basketball coach at Withrow. But I was working on my doctorate, and I was at the point where I had to do my residency as part of my doctoral program. So at the end of the basketball season, I was going to take a sabbatical leave of absence and go back to the University of Cincinnati, complete my year's residency by doing the spring, the summer, and the fall, and then return to Withrow to pick up my basketball coaching responsibilities in the fall. However,
Didn't work that way.
yeah, the two things happened. One, the Cincinnati Public Schools were experiencing financial difficulties. So they canceled sabbaticals. Okay. So that was one thing, almost simultaneously. And I'm already enrolled in my spring quarter courses at UC. Almost simultaneously, a vacancy developed on the University of Cincinnati basketball coaching staff.
Oh, wow.
So they approached me to see if I would be interested in that. And two things. Basketball coaches didn't get paid much, but they got paid more than TAs, teaching assistants. And so I talked to George Smith, the athletic director, and said, I'm enrolled in the doctoral program. so I need to be able to complete my residency requirements, and then I would be interested in. And so he said, well, that can be worked, and indeed it worked. And so I completed the courses that I was required to take for my residency, and became a member of the University of Cincinnati basketball staff, and actually wrote my dissertation while the basketball team, and I was traveling with the basketball team and all that. And so when I completed my dissertation in '71, that's then when I went to Wilmington College, and I was at Wilmington College from 1971 to 1990. Actually 1994, but so I have enjoyed everything that I have done. However, when I left to go on to something else, appreciated what I'd done, enjoyed what I'm doing. When that was sort of finished, and an opportunity to move on to something else, I clearly, again, appreciated what I'd done here, enjoyed the work that I'm getting into, and the work that the CYC was doing fit nicely into sort of the interests that I had as a teacher at Withrow High School. I essentially taught 30 students 6 times a day. So I had an impact on 180 students. Okay. When I went to Wilmington College, and I'm teaching 30 students who are going to go out and teach the 180 students that I had. So in that sense, sort of expanding the kind of impact that you can have.
The statistics again, Stephanie. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
And so,
someday maybe the light bulb will click on.
well, so then
Math is hard.
So then coming to the CYC, I said, just in the mentoring program, we have been able to impact 50,000.
Amazing.
Yes, that's amazing. And then you add on the number in the educational talent search that you have been able to impact. So it's not insignificant. And then when I look out now, I couldn't be prouder of what the CYC is doing.
Well, then that said, you couldn't be prouder, but during your time as executive director, if you can think of, is there anything you would have done differently, or should CYC have done differently, or?
Well, let me ask it in a different way, too, or to build off of it, is you had talked about the initial vision was that CYC wouldn't always be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that, 25 or I guess closer to 28 or 29 years later since CYC's been started, it's still very, very important.
It is very, very important.
What happened how did it move from a shorter term, hey, we think we can solve this, to a much longer process?
I think two things. One, we essentially said that we're not trying to build a permanent organization. However, there are some programs that we would like to, when John Bryant goes back to Wilmington College, would like to see that program be continued.
Yeah. Okay.
So that accounts for the kind of funding set up for the mentoring program.
Okay. Right.
Said
I see.
we want to be able, in a sense, to sort of endow
Yep.
this program. On the other hand, we're at the mercy of the federal government in terms of the Education Talent Search Program. We have to go and try to get that renewed. And if that renewal is not there, then our ability to so in terms of the kinds of decisions, because I talked about the TCAP program, and at one point that program had more employees than any of our other programs, but it was a federally funded program, essentially with a sunset. So there are decisions that we had to make, and are still being made, in terms of if you take on this program, are you going to be able to sustain it? Because if you're depending on somebody else for the funding, and so it's those kinds of decisions that we had to make. And so, and you asked me the question: is there something you would have done differently? I think we did pretty amazingly, and sometimes the programs that we nurtured and spun off might have more visibility than the CYC. Artworks has a lot of, and absolutely pleased that we did what we did and how we did it. But we said this is a program good for kids, good for what we're trying to accomplish. So absolutely let's do it and give it its own existence. And the same thing is true of the Mayerson Academy.
That started as part of CYC?
CYC started it.
Started
No.
to make it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and intentionally set it up with its own set it up as a 501c3 entity with its own board and all that.
You know, you made me think of when you I just thought of both Artworks and Mayerson as CYC alumni. You know, we were talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same kind of a thing, and that's one of the things I really like about CYC is the fact that it's not. We don't really care who gets the credit. We just want the kids to be successful, and so if somebody can do it better, then great. How do we help that happen?
The CYC, and I think it probably still does, has a reputation as not being territorial.
Yeah.
And a part of that in both of those cases, because at the time that they were being born, the CYC still had not said that we're going to be an entity that will last for 25, 30, 50 years. Both of those were taking place right in the middle of the 1990s.
Kind of play behind the scenes, right, in some cases?
The answer is yes, behind the scene. The idea for and the creation of the Mayerson Academy was fully right in the middle of the CYC. The CYC came up with the idea and the whole thing. When I say came up with it, because it was patterned after a program in Louisville, Kentucky, called the Gaines Academy, and John Pepper, Bob Wheeling, Leetta Paul, who was the superintendent of CPS, and Lionel Brown, who was an assistant superintendent, and myself went to Louisville, visited the Gaines Academy, and met with a couple people and said, this makes sense, and so let's go back to Cincinnati and do it. So that's in terms of artworks. Roxanne Qualls had just become the mayor, and so sat down, and the mayor is one of the members of what was called the executive committee. Somebody from business, someone from city government, and someone from the public school system. And so sat down with Roxanne and said, is there something that you would have a special interest in from the city side now that you're coming on as mayor? And she said there are two programs that are of interest. One is in Boston, and they've got a program called City Year. And so I went off to Boston.
Is that the one you had checked out before? Or
no,
different.
Different.
Okay.
Different. So went to Boston, looked at that, and then there is another program in Chicago called something 37, because it's the blocks
Okay. Seen a lot.
And so went there, and they had essentially artworks, which was a summer youth employment program focused on the arts. And so how to get kids involved in public art and all that. So came back and she said, have a preference sort of for this, that we can do this. And then a group of us went up to Chicago, met with the directors and all that. And at that time, they had cows all over the place, and so that was sort of the theme. So we came back and came up with something called the Big Pig Gig.
Yeah. Yeah, I went down to see that.
the Big Pig Gig, and launched artworks.
Cool.
And I said one of the things I think that the CYC should be extremely proud of is what it has meant and continues to mean to the city of Cincinnati, and we always had at heart our focus was on the kids. This is what we envision for our kids.
That's awesome.
Well then, going off of that, so it's always been about the kids and stuff.
Absolutely.
What's one piece of advice you could give to today's youth?
To today's youth?
Yeah.
Mercy.
That's actually a good piece of advice.
Yeah, mercy.
Isn't it?
There is nothing more important that they will graduate from high school. The knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values to participate fully in the economic, social, and political, and I'll underscore political now, the civic history. Very important. It tells you how you got to where you are. But the future is where you, not old geezers like myself.
Oh gosh.
So yes, you need to be fully engaged. Now, you don't know everything, and we old geezers.
You never really know.
Yeah. And so we have something to say and important, and you need to know where you've been. So not in any way. It's very important, but you don't want to be shackled by history. You don't want to be. You don't want to be a slave to the past. You in a sense have to live in the present.
Be a student of the past.
A student of the past. And then it's up to you and your cohorts. And you're very much involved in that. You don't. There used to be a song way back when. Either one of you old enough.
I might.
Stop the world. I want to get off.
I've heard the phrase. I didn't know
Yeah.
it was a song.
Yeah, no. You want to help steer the world. And so if I were talking to a group of students, that's what I would tell them.
Okay.
Excellent.
Am I dismissed?
Did you have other questions?
I think we pretty much covered everything. I just have like non-CYC, just one non-CYC, and don't take it the wrong way. I'm like 41. What do I need to do to be spunky and stuff like you at 80? Because I think that's awesome. I have a 90-year-old grandma who just like sits in her bedroom and does nothing. And I was like, I don't want that to be. You are awesome. There are times I come home from work and school, and it's just like I want to go lie on the bed and die. So I want to be spunky like you at 80.
Listen, I cannot do at 80
What?
what I could do at 70 or 60 or whatever. But a part of this world is my world too.
I like that. I like
So-
that.
You got to keep steering.
Mm-hmm.
You may not
Yep.
have both hands on the wheel.
But absolutely, that's it.
I like that. Thank you.
So I have a question. I have a non-question as well. Did you play during the national championship years with UC?
The answer is no. I graduated along with Oscar Robertson and others in 1960, and we played in the national finals. Lost both in 1969 in 1959 and 1960. And then the year after we graduated, in 1961 and 1962, UC won the national championship, and then in 1963, they were runners-up. So for 5 straight years, UC was in the Final Four.
That's amazing. And you graduated the same year as Oscar Robertson?
Mhm.
Now, forgive my ignorance of this, did Jerry Lucas, was he playing at the time?
Jerry Lucas was a sophomore at Ohio State.
Ohio State, I'm sorry. Okay.
Our-
But he played for the Cincinnati Royals as well.
Right.
That's
Mhm.
right.
He was a sophomore at Ohio State our senior year.
Okay.
So the Final Four that year consisted of Ohio State, California, UC, and City College no, not City College, NYU. NYU and California. California beat us in the semifinals, and Ohio State beat NYU in the semifinals. Back then, you played the consolation game, and so UC beat NYU in the consolation game, and Ohio State beat California in the championship.
Okay.
And that's Lucas was a sophomore that year.
I asked my dad, always loved Jerry Lucas. My middle name is Luke.
Oh,
and that's why. So
yeah.
that's as close as I got to being good at basketball, though. Was
Were you from Middletown?
No, my dad went to Xavier. I can't actually remember which part of town he's from, so he just knew, but for whatever reason, he was just a big fan. Yeah.
Because Jerry Lucas was from Middletown High School.
Okay.
And so,
that might be the Cincinnati connection I'm thinking of, other than the Royals that he came.
He
Did you know we used to have a professional basketball team in Cincinnati?
yeah, the Cincinnati Royals.
Where did they go? Did they go to Milwaukee?
No. They went to Kansas City.
Kansas City.
And then from Kansas City to Oakland. So the
Golden State.
The Warriors.
Huh.
No, I think that's right. And Oscar then was traded from Cincinnati to Milwaukee.
Okay.
And he and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar played together for a couple of years. Then Oscar retired. And Kareem then left Milwaukee and went to L.A. So that's it.
Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I knew I'd have to tell my dad I knew somebody who at least...
I was on the team.
6 degrees.
All right, that counts. Well,
And back then, it was, well, it still is, the crosstown rivalry was
pretty strong.
Pretty strong.
Excellent.
Well, am I dismissed?
You were dismissed.